Why, hello and welcome back to another episode of Voice of the Rings. I'm your host and guide, Zollin Ironshield, and this is from my playlist, Zollin's Opinion. Alright, guys, we're going to do the honest review and breakdown of Episode 8, the finale of Rings of Power. Alright, my friends, so, I'm doing a little thing like I did in Episode 7 right at the beginning here. I just got to let everyone know that there are, I have multiple thoughts always going on in my head, right, when I'm watching something. So I don't want to change and ruin this for anyone. So if you're someone that really liked the show, that's awesome. I like the show. I'm going to say it out right off the bat right now. I've enjoyed Rings of Power, okay? I really liked it. And I want to explain a few things and break a few things down real quick. Because a lot of times people hear me say something and they will just assume that I totally hated the show. Or that I, completely like every little tiny thing because one or the other. Let's not do that, right? Let's keep it broken down. Again, if you're someone that likes it, I am not here to change your mind and things. This is my opinion. This is Zollin's opinion. I know a lot of you really like to hear my opinion, which I greatly appreciate it that you care to hear what I think. But just remember that there are stuff that I thoroughly enjoyed in this series, and there are a few things that I didn't enjoy. And I will just tell you the things I think, and here's how I break it down in my mind, okay? Quick little breakdown. So, from a feeling of just watching it as a standalone fantasy series, I have thoroughly enjoyed it, okay? So, it is one of the best fantasy series, definitely, that I've seen in the last 5 years. And my friend Jethros would also agree with me. He made that same comment. So, it's a really good standalone fantasy series. It's fantastic. It's right up there with the Game of Thrones series and all that kind of stuff, okay? So it's really, really enjoyable in that way. I like it or The Witcher, right? I really love The Witcher when they did that on Netflix. That was a really good series, even though some parts, maybe not totally, appropriate for all ages. But I skipped it. But anyway, Rings of Power, I loved it that it was appropriate, by the way, through the whole series. That made me very happy. But so the biggest thing I want to tell you guys here, and I won't go too long into this, is let me just break it down for you though, is that one side of me watched it, enjoyed it, watching it from a standalone fantasy series point of view, I enjoyed it thoroughly. I was trying a little too hard in this series to try to match everything with the canon lore, okay? So the problem with matching everything to the canon lore is that the Rings of Power, for one, this is one argument, they didn't have a lot of rights to everything, which I understand. But even in things they had rights to, they did change things, okay? We know that now. They changed things. So what I'm doing is I'm looking at it from a multiverse scenario, right? So the main goal for me then, looking at it from a multiverse scenario, is that one side of me, I'm watching it just for enjoyment of watching it and liking it. It left me with a really good feeling the last episode. It really did. I felt like it could have a little bit more completion. There will be spoilers in this, so remember that. But I felt like that was really enjoyable. Like that was a good episode. That was a good show, right? And but the other side of me, the other side of my brain, and again, please don't hear this and think that I'm just attacking everything, okay? I'm not. The other side of me is trying to connect it to the lore, right? And the more I try to do that, the more that side of me gets frustrated, right? And I'm like, this doesn't work. That will not connect. That they've changed it too much, right? Which bottom line is a lot of it is that, right? They've changed things. And again, that's their right. That their creative license, right? It's their adaptation. They're able to do that kind of thing. So, all right, so the goal is then, in my mind, is to look at this from a half, you know me, I'm a half full kind of guy, right? I'm a glass half full kind of guy. So the goal will be then, is to look at this from the perspective of more of a standalone series, like I've been saying, a more, multiverse. It's set in Middle-earth with the same names and locations, but slightly different story changes to materials or lines or that kind of stuff, right? So, but I really do enjoy it thoroughly. So, this is the thing I need you guys to remember, is that when I say something that I disliked, just remember that I'm not trying to convince you to dislike or like it with me, vice versa, right? Enjoy what you like. Have your own mind on things, guys, okay? Enjoy it. I'm just going to tell you things. I think that a lot of people who watch this that don't know about the lore at all will probably get more enjoyment out of it than someone who is trying to compare things to the actual lore. Does that make sense? Again, there are parameters. If you watch my episode 7, I talk about this at the episode 7 too, right? So you can go watch episode 7. I talk about the same similar thing. There are parameters that that will fit with the lore. So like they'll take something where something's completely changed, but then they'll tie it to the actual lore with something else. Like, oh, I can see where they did that. They, for a creative story change, they did this, they did that kind of thing. And it depends on what you like or dislike, right? Do you like the changes? I also think that Rings of Power will bring many people to watch this series and then want to read the books, which will be a great boon to our Tolkien family community, right? Because they're going to see Rings of Power and they're going to want to read the books and they're going to go, oh wow, a lot of stuff changed, but I like these books too. You know what I mean? That kind of thing. Kind of like with Peter Jackson's adaptations, right? So just remember, I'll say some more as I go through the video because I want to make this intro too long, right? But just remember that if I say something I dislike, doesn't mean that I totally dislike that part, okay, guys? So if I say something that I didn't really like that, you know, what they did with this change, it doesn't necessarily mean I didn't enjoy the change in itself, right? Does that make sense? So, for example, if you have two ice cream bowls, right? One's strawberry and one's, you know, vanilla, and you like strawberry a lot, but they take that away and give you vanilla. Well, honestly, I like vanilla too. It's still good, right? It's still good. I'm still enjoying the ice cream. I just would have rather had the strawberry ice cream, right? Does that kind of make sense? Is that a good little analogy there? All right. With that aside, let's move into the show and watch it. We can't do sound. We're only going to do clips. A little stills here, and I have a little thing over there. So what I'm going to do is you'll see a lot of I enjoyed, which will be basically things that I enjoyed, whether it be change things, their multiverse version, as I'm calling it, or things that, you know, and then if it says lore correct, it's something I think is tied in well with the actual books, with Tolkien's words that he wrote. Things I disliked are things either way, and then horrible lore things are things they really changed that I personally don't like. If you like it, that is fine. I'm not telling you can't like it, right? Please don't think that, guys. You know me, I'm really positive. I'm a glass half full kind of guy, and I really did enjoy the series. I really did enjoy Rings of Power. I really did. In my mind, in my side of my mind that is more heading towards the, you know, wanting to connect to the lore, I think the real thing that bothers me is that I think it could have been better. And I think it's already great. From a standalone fantasy series, watching it without trying to connect to every little thing, I enjoyed it thoroughly. It was a really good series. It's one of the best ones in a while. But I personally think it could have been better if they had connected more to the actual story words of Tolkien from the books, okay? Again, Tolkien leaves really big blank areas in the lore of the Second Age. I get that. It's not like Lord of the Rings where it's a novel. It's a history, like, encyclopedia of the Second Age with all that. So it's a lot of information to fit in there, right? It's a lot. But I really think they could have been even better. But that's only one side of me. The other side of me really enjoyed the show. Like, I really thoroughly enjoyed it. So, like, let's say my two sides of my mind. Full rating now. I've watched the whole series right off the bat here, in case you're not want to be here for the whole review of this episode. One side of me, it's like 8 out of 10, 9 out of 10. Some things, visuals were 10 out of 10 for me. I thought everything was fantastic with visuals. I loved the visuals. Some people didn't like Numenor, they told me. Some people did. I loved Numenor. I loved Mordor. I loved Eregion. I loved Lindon. They were all what I imagined in the books when I read, okay? So those were all fantastic. And then my other side that wants to match it to the lore, that it's my more negative, like, take on things about trying to hook everything to the book itself, trying to keep it perfect, it would be like a 5 out of 10, right? Or 6 out of 10. So again, I know a lot of people are like, what's your rating of the show? Well, honestly, feeling just like, did I enjoy it? Oh, it's at least an 8 out of 10, if not higher, right? Like, I thoroughly enjoyed the show. But as in my side that's like lore about, and again, why I think some people who watch it, who don't know anything about the lore, are going to thoroughly enjoy this way more than people who maybe know about the lore, okay? Again, because, you know, we're trying to compare it, right, to the story. Again, I don't think that's the same with Peter Jackson's. Peter Jackson's, if you knew the lore, you could still thoroughly, like, there wasn't as much of there's not much of contrast there in between. Again, there's still stuff in parameters in the Rings of Power that fit completely with the lore, though. They are there. There's a lot of big changes, right? Which we'll talk about as we go through it right now. So anyway, thanks for listening to my whole beginning spiel here, and let's just get through it. Let's go through this, my friends. I'll talk a little bit more about things as we go. So let's skip this little recap. All right, so we get the shot of these pretty little flowers, right? So again, and by the way, you guys, so spoilers, again, remember, we're going through the actual episode here with clips. All right, so this is Erin Gallen, right? This is actually a real location, and also it's this is an area in Greenwood. I love, okay, lore positive here. Boom, lore positive. They're using the term Greenwood because it's Greenwood right now. It's not Mirkwood yet, right? The forest, so I love that. Fantastic. So we have the Meteor Man. We're going to know what he is in a moment. We all are guessing he's a wizard, right? That's what we hope that he is, right? A wizard. Again, I'm still in the boat that I really want him to be a blue wizard. By the end of this review, you'll know things that I'm like, I will talk about at the end. But I'm still in the boat that I really want him to be a blue wizard. We don't 100% know. We have an inkling at the end of this episode. But again, too, on a side note, hey, Amazon, my friend Sebastian is an amazing actor who looks very similar to this guy. He could be the other blue wizard if there's 2 blue wizards. So you should definitely, yes, contact me and I'll give you his contact info. If Amazon sees this, guys, let him know. My friend would be perfect. He's a really good actor here in Southern California. He's awesome. He's my good friend on the channel. He might come on for an interview sometime. But he'd be perfect for one of the blue wizards, okay? So, again, I really hope he's one of the blue wizards because it would be perfect because my friend literally has a very similar, he's very tall, has a very similar look to this guy, especially if he had a more of the beard and stuff like that, and it would just be perfect. Anyway, side note there. But I really want him to be in the show, my friend. I think he'd be awesome. Sebastian, he'd be really, really good. But again, I don't know how they've already picked actors and all that kind of stuff. But who knows? Maybe a season 3 or something. You know, they have the Blue Wizards come. Even if this isn't Blue Wizard, this is someone else. They could have the Blue Wizards, and Sebastian could be a Blue Wizard or something else, right? It'd be perfect. Yes, it'd be very, very cool. I would love that. All right. I'm sure he would love that too, and I'm sure Amazon would not be sorry. They would definitely be perfect. All right. So let's keep going through here. So he drops an apple, right? It's the apple that she gave him when they left. Remember, the hobbits are looking for him right now, but so are those 3 scary people, right? We talked about it in episode 7, which we really don't know about. And then basically she turns from Nori, Nori, or Eleanor, right? That's her short, Nori. Eleanor, the hobbit, into this scary person holding the apple, right? And basically what happens here right at the beginning is that we come to serve you, and they go, Lord Sauron. And we're all like, oh, it's Sauron? I still don't think it's Sauron at this point. My thought at this point, watching the episode, I think they're mistaken. I don't think it's Sauron. I think they think it's Sauron, right? Because it'd be really, it would be terrible if it was Sauron. Because they show him being, good, and, he's, struggling with his powers, but he's, that would be really weird to make him suddenly be Sauron, right? So, anyway, he's like, what? What are you talking about? Again, what do you guys think of these characters? You leave a comment. So, this whole part, I'm sorry, I dislike how they look, these characters, and it's not because they're girls, that's not what I'm saying. I just don't think they look ominous enough. I think they could have made them look, the main character does, the one with the scary white eyes, she's very ominous, but I don't know, the rest of them don't seem quite as ominous. That one's good, that one's a plus, okay? She's scary. So anyway, they're here, they're we come to serve you. Again, she looks more like a nun to me, a little bit. Does that make sense? Again, I'm not trying to change your mind. If you have a different thought pattern, don't let me ruin it for you, okay? But for me, her staff is super cool, though, whatever this is, and her armor's fine, too. But I think that the head thing, they should have done a different color. This is obviously not part of the tunic. See how it's hard? It's like a helmet. They should have made this a gray or something, in my opinion. And then that would have made it not look like a nun thing wrapped around her head. You know what I'm saying? Anyway, that's just my thought on that. But I mean, her helmet's really cool. I think it feels like her costume's not quite complete somehow, but there might be a reason for that though. So let's keep going into this a little farther. We're gonna skip the intro. Again, they're very cool in this episode. I actually do like those 3 in this episode though. So let's get into it, and I'll explain it. So now we get a shot right here of a beautiful shot of Eregion again. And there's some boats, and basically they ride by their horses. Remember, Galadriel and Halbrand are riding because he's wounded to get help. So they're riding. They get to, look at that shot of Eregion. Oh my gosh. Again, I'm going to say I enjoyed and a lore correct because I think it just looks fantastic. I think Eregion looks beautiful, all right? Absolutely beautiful. Again, they're building the Starforge, but now they're having an issue, right? Which this is a big lore change, right? Which I've already disliked in other videos. I'm not gonna put dislike, but there's a whole thing right about the Mithril, right? That somehow the Mithril has an essence of elves, and they need that because they're diminishing. I gotta go over this real quick. This is really important, okay? From a storytelling perspective, it helps push the plot along in Rings of Power with the time compression. So I understand their storytelling, but I don't... The biggest thing I dislike, remember we talked about it in episode 5 when they talked about it, the story of the elf and Belrog touch the tree that apparently has a Silmaril in it that lightning bolt hits and creates Mithril underground, right? And the reason, here's the thing I dislike about that the most, okay? That I wouldn't really care as much. Again, it's just a plot line that they're putting a bunch of cool things together to try to make a new idea, right, for it. I don't really like it personally myself, so I'm going to do a little dislike, because I don't like it personally myself, okay? But I don't mind it for the storytelling, right? I don't mind it for the storytelling. But here's the thing that I think bothered me the most about it, that they make the comment the reason it's so strong is because the Belrog essence, right? So the light and the energy is from the Elven Valinor essence, and the Belrog gives the Mithril its strength and power. I don't like that. The reason being is Tolkien is very, 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 very clear in his representing good and evil in his books. In fact, so much that some people have criticized him on that, right? Some people have criticized Tolkien on that. I like that about Tolkien. I like that he's very distinct about good and evil, and that evil is corrupted, it's weaker, right? But and it just wants to kill all the good, right? But I didn't like the fact that they're like, oh, well, a Belrog is the reason why Mithril is so strong. I dislike that. So that's a lore incorrect for me, because I disliked it that much. So I know that again, we don't know exactly what Tolkien would have liked or disliked, right? We can't ask him, right? He's away in heaven, not worrying about all these issues about this stuff. But I don't know, because he was very clear on what he liked with good and evil. Like, that's why, like, some of the other fantasy writers have kind of criticized and said he makes it a little too black and white, right? Where a lot of fantasy writers like to make it a little more gray, right? Because, real world, that is sometimes it's a little bit more gray what's good and evil, right? That's life. But so I do understand the criticisms, but I think that me personally, I didn't like that, because it makes the Belrog seem like, yeah, they're powerful creatures, but that's why Mithril's so strong. It belittles Mithril for me, just a little bit. But again, good story plot moving forward for their storytelling, so I do understand. Anyway, that's my thoughts on that. Please don't let me ruin it for you if you like that part of the storytelling. If you like that, great. Just remember that isn't the actual lore about that substance, but that particular idea, is it something that could fit in instead of a multiverse? Could it fit in with the actual lore? In some ways, maybe, but I really don't think so, because the Silmarils were all lost, and it'd be really weird if they were just in some random tree on top of the Misty Mountains. That's one that's just like, that's not really it's the kind of where the realism thing comes in. I really like a little realism, like something that makes sense. Again, it doesn't have to be perfect because it's fantasy, but I like a little realism in fantasy, and yeah. And just all the perfectly timed things to cause that, and then the elves knew about that. I think that personally, a lot of people have a theory, I said this in the episode 7 review, a lot of people have a theory that the Arkenstone is a Silmaril, right? One of the Silmarils of Feanor. I personally, and that's just because there's not really much told about it, so they just link those. It's pretty clear it's not in what Tolkien writes in The Hobbit and stuff, that it's just the heart of the mountain that was found in Erebor. But, I don't personally like that idea. The reason being is I think the Silmarils are cool by themselves, and I think the Arkenstone is a cool thing by itself, and I think that Mithril is a cool thing by itself. I don't think it needs to be expanded on. It's cool. It's a metal. It's not magical, right? Of course, in Rings of Power, they're making it a magical metal, right? It has the light of Valinor in it. Now, we do know that Mithril glows, but again, it's a property that was found in the earth when the world was created by the dwarves, and the elves didn't know anything about it until the dwarves started trading with them, okay? So, yeah. And as you saw in episode 7, I didn't really like how they woke up the Belrog, even though it is cool the Belrog's woken up, right? But I didn't like that they woke him up with a leaf. I think it would have been like a rock or something that fell down there, right? So anyway, that's another side note, but that wasn't the other one. So anyway, they get here, and it's like, they're talking, and basically, Gil-galad is telling him, we have to leave these shores very soon unless we can find some way to get the Mithril. And he's telling him he's telling Celebrimbor that we have to tell Gil-galad, king of the High Elves, that we have to, that we can't get the Mithril from the dwarves. They're not gonna get it. And he's like, well, what can we do with just a small amount of Mithril, right? The one he gave him, the little tiny piece. And so they get here, right? And then basically she's like, we need help. And they're like, oh my gosh, Galadriel, why are you here? How'd you get here? And basically Elvish medicine, they help Halbrand, right? They get Halbrand here. And there is some interesting storytelling here that is, I thought was very well done. I'll explain it in a minute. We'll go into that in a second. So basically they have another conversation here. This is a very nice conversation to an extent. I liked it. I liked this conversation. It was more of like, I'll always be your friend. I'll always be there for you. I liked it. All right. That's a like. That was good. There's a couple things she said. She talked about diving off the ship thing and kind of like that was her only thought is to dive off the ship. It made a little bit more sense, right? Because a lot of us, not all of us, but a lot of us made a lot of fun that she jumped off in the middle of an ocean to swim back, right? But this one made a little bit more sense that she just knew she wasn't ready to be there yet. And, you know, of course, that was all made up. She never went back at that point in the actual story, but that's okay. It's a storytelling for the Rings of Power version, right? For the multiverse. So again, I'm looking at this from their storytelling perspective now. And, yeah, I mean, I thought this conversation was very good. You're going to have to watch it for yourself to see what you think for yourself, guys. I don't want to, unless you're one of those people that doesn't want to watch it at all, you just want to hear my view, that's fine. But, I think that it's probably good to you watch it yourself and you kind of pick what you like or dislike about it. Try not to let people influence your thoughts on things, guys. I appreciate that you guys all like hearing my opinion, but make your own decisions on things too. Again, that's why I'm very careful. I didn't watch any reviews or anyone's opinions until I watched it for myself, right? The series. Now I'm going to go watch other people's reviews and I'll tell everyone what I think about things too. So anyway, now we see Celebrimbor. This part's really good. So basically, Halbrand walks into his place here, and he's like, I really like this part. I enjoyed it because basically he goes, "Wow, is this the shop of Celebrimbor?" Right? And Celebrimbor, he doesn't know he's Celebrimbor. He's like, "Yeah, it is." He's like, "I've always wanted to as a small child," kind of thing. You know, and then he kind of likes it, you know, he's kind of like flattered kind of thing. He's like, yeah, he's here. And then basically he opens the top and he's like, you're Celebrimbor. And he's like, yes, I am. And then we see this shot. Oh, okay, lore correct. Like, those are obviously the 3 stones for the Elven Rings of Power. Obviously, right? Like, that's obvious. So, thumbs up there. Woohoo. Awesome. All right. So, we get a little slint. And then he's got the mithril, and he's like, so what have you... Basically, he gives Celebrimbor an idea that Celebrimbor didn't have. And my first immediate reaction to this was, how the heck did Celebrimbor, a master elvensmith that's thousands of years old, not come up with that idea before this Southernland human, right? And then it started dawning on me a little bit. What person came to Eregion in the stories, in the actual lore, and was helping the elves make the Rings of Power? Oh yeah, you know what I'm talking about. I'm thinking now, this is interesting at this point. I'm thinking, is this Sauron? Is Halbrand Sauron? Right? I'm like, why would he know this knowledge? I was like, that would make so much sense. So this is Sauron, right? Now again, he's not an elf. So if it is Sauron, that would be a little bit of a massive lore change, but it would be a clever storytelling thing to throw people off who know the lore. So I'm like, okay, interesting, right? And then he's talking about it, and he kind of holds it, and then he gives it back to Celebrimbor, and Celebrimbor's like, oh, okay, you know what I mean? Like, that's a good idea. And he's like, you could make a circlet, like a crown, right? And he's like, oh, good point, right? So he's like, okay, and he gives him the idea, and he's like, that's a pretty clever idea. Because remember, they're trying to make, again, this is where the good storytelling comes in on their part, right? For their made-up plot, it's the fact that they're running out of time because the elves are supposedly going to run out of life force, right? They're going to have to leave the shores when the tree dies. So that's like why Gilgalad trying to make them all come to the shore to leave. And Celebrimbor doesn't want to leave, so he's trying to create this quick, right? Again, that is not a time compression. It makes sense for their time compressed line, but that isn't the actual lore. But still, this whole part I enjoyed. It was excellent, fantastic conversation. And I was like, that was really, really well done, right? I was like, that was super well done. So then I started having suspicions of that, right? And then a good shot of the mithril. And then we see a shot of Numenor. This is obviously the tower and the thing, right? We get shot back in Numenor. Beautiful. I love how Numenor looks. Thoroughly enjoy. I'm going to say I enjoy it again. Again, I think lore correct. I think Numenor is a very cool combination of the looks, and there's a little hint of Minas Tirith from the movies, the way they built the thing. I think it's very cool. And then we get back to this. Alferzon's basically saying the king is probably going to pass away. We need to be ready to put up these black flags, right? And that kind of stuff, because she's not back yet, the queen, right? So, and then, you know, each one of you, he says, will get to sit with the king and do a drawing, a likeness for an hour, and then propose it as a, you know, idea for a statue they're going to build for him, right? Kind of thing. So, so then basically so now she's here. They immediately do it right now. She's having her hour sitting with the king. And then the king kind of wakes up. He says something about darkness. He thinks that she's his daughter, the queen, who's not back yet, right? The queen regent, Muriel, right? So she's like, oh, okay. And he's like, you need to do this. So he actually gets up out of bed. She's like, where is he? You know, and she calls for help. And he's sitting at the door, and he actually opened the secret door up to the chamber, which we saw Galadriel and Muriel in before. And she just basically goes up here. There's some pretty awesome music this part. And she, like, takes off the thing. And that's all we get. That's all we get. We don't know why. He said a certain thing about, you know, you must see. Don't look as long as I did, because, you know, I can't distinguish between now and what's reality and what's, you know, vision, kind of, is what the king said. It's fine. Again, the Palantirs do not have the ability to see into the future at all in the lore. So that is completely an alternate reality for Rings of Power, which is fine, right? It's a good storytelling thing for people who don't know anything about the thing. So again, I'm going to say lore inaccuracy of that, but I did enjoy the parts, okay? So I'm going to put it in enjoyment because I did enjoy it. I love all the cool rings that King Gil-galad has here. So he's holding the mithril, and basically he's like, we can make these crowns, right? We can make a crown, we can put it on your head, and then that will help sustain all the elves, right? High King. And he's like, you'd put all that power on just me, is what he said. And they're like, yeah, that's the idea, right? And he's like, okay. Anyway, it's a fine conversation. This conversation is good. Again, it's quite, we are on their multiverse story now, right? We are on their story of their timelines of that they're diminishing and they're losing their life force. This is super important. I said this in episode 7. I did not say this in this review, but it's really important. My friend, sorry, text message. My friend, made a good comment to me, right? In fact, he wouldn't mind me saying his name, Night Chaos, which you've seen on the channel. He made a comment that what about in the Lord of the Rings when Elrond wants Arwen to go back to the Undying Lands because she's like losing her warmth in her hands, like her elven light. And is that the same as what's happening to the elves in the Rings of Power? And the answer is absolutely not. But it's an excellent question because for someone who might not know all the background of the lore, it was a really awesome question. In fact, we might have Night Chaos on. He thought it'd be fun too to have a conversation about this kind of stuff and things that maybe might be confusing to people who want to know the differences between the Rings of Power multiverse version of what their storylines are and their actual lore, right? Because there is some big things that changed now. But the difference is Arwen is half elven. She's choosing to become mortal, a human, to be with Aragorn. That's why Elrond wants her to go back to the Undying Lands, because he wants her to stay an elf. He's like, don't take human. No, I want you to stay with me, right? And but she's half elven, just like Elrond, because remember, Elrond's brother, Elros, became the first king of Numenor originally. He's already passed away thousands of years ago. Elrond's still alive, though, in Rings of Power because he chose to be an elf. Okay? Again, very important distinction there, but differences. Just, I'm sure a lot of people would probably be thinking the same thing, like, oh, well, is that why they did that in Lord of the Rings if you watch the Lord of the Rings movies, and you're someone who's just watched movies, you've never read the books, right? You would know this if you read all the background stuff, but it's a lot of information, right? I understand if you just watch the movies and enjoy the shows, right? So anyway, we're going to keep going through here. Let's keep moving on, because there's a lot to break down here in this finale episode. So he's like, there's really no time to do this. You know, we need to get back right now. I want you to disband the whole city and everyone come to Linden to leave on the ships. And they're like, oh man. And they're like, well, crap, right? You know, like, oh man. you know? It's good. They're great actors. Oh, they're all good actors. They're fantastic. Celebrimbor is a great actor. I really like how he acts. And also, this whole episode, Galadriel's acting is fantastic. I really loved her in episode 8. Elrond, all of them, right? Gil-galad, he's fine too. Again, the reason I don't really like how he is being portrayed in a good way, I think, comparing to their story plot, if that makes sense. Because he feels weird what he's trying to say, he's trying to force, but since in their story plot they're going to die without this essence from the Mithril, of course they want to leave. Right, like, of course he's going to want to get his people out of there to Valinor so they don't all die, right? So it makes sense. All right, so anyway, let's see here. All right, Gil-galad basically has a conversation. This is a very, very good conversation, which I did thoroughly enjoy, that Elrond basically tells him, hey, didn't you just tell me even a spark of hope matters? Did you forget your own counsel? And basically, since they're close friends, because I know that from the actual lore, which they do show that he obviously respects Elrond to let him talk to him like this, right? Gil-galad basically is like, yeah, okay, I'll give you 3 weeks, right? Basically is what he says, right? To make these crowns, right? So, again, the idea of making them into circlets was the idea of this, of one of them obviously, Halbrand is now here helping him start to craft, right? Start to figure out how to do it. And they're basically trying to fuse. They want to add some other material with Mithril. And they're trying to fuse it so they can have more of it, right? To make these crowns, right? But the Mithril's being really stubborn. So anyway, we'll go into that in a second. Galadriel now does something that's very important for the storyline in their storytelling, okay? She asks this elf, random guy, who's obviously a librarian or something, to go find records on the bloodline of Halbrand, okay? Because she's kind of having these weird inklings, just like we all have, okay? So basically, they walk by Celebrimbor, and then so she's like, yeah, please do that. And now they have this conversation, her and Halbrand, right? And she's like, why are you helping everybody? She's like, oh, well, you help me, you know, that kind of thing. It's a good conversation, because he's starting to seem a little sus, as you'd say in the Among Us crowd. You guys all know what that is, right? My younger crowd, like, guys, if you don't know what that is, it's a video game that got really popular during COVID. It's like a who did the crime game kind of thing on a computer, almost like Clue. And basically it's like, you know, these little guys, you have to like kill people, you're the bad guy, and you have to hide and pretend like you're innocent. And then like when people say you're sus, meaning you're suspicious, right? Anyway, that's what that is, side note. But yeah, he's starting to seem real sus. And then I enjoyed that game. I played it a lot too. So he basically says some stuff. Now we're getting a weird thing again with, remember how I was kind of weirded out in episode 6 about him almost seeming like he liked Galadriel? I was like, that was kind of weird, right? Well, she's obviously thinking her acting is excellent here. It's excellent. So again, like, and very, very well done, okay? Because her acting is excellent. She's starting to like go, huh, this is weird, because she's really trusted Halbrand, right? This whole time. He's like acting so weird, basically. And then basically they go into they go back to this conversation, and they're explaining to him that he's Sauron, and they're basically wizards or witches or sorcerers, right, from the east. They're from Rhûn, right, when she says it. And I was like, oh, that's actually pretty cool, right? Like, I enjoyed that background lore right there. And I actually think that's lore correct to an extent, because there would be evil sorcerers from Rhûn, right? Because that's where Sauron had a lot of influence at this time, right? And they're like, come back to us, and we'll help teach you and get your memories back, basically, right? And he's like, what? Right? He's like, oh, okay. And anyway, he's like, oh, really? And they explain the star thing to him, and he's like, you can only see these stars in one place, right, or where they're from. And he's like, oh, that's the stars I remembered. Again, no idea why, no idea. That's their storytelling. We still don't know in this season. It'll probably be for season 2. And then basically what he does is he realizes he has powers, so he starts like kind of like summoning this tornado around him, and he's like, not to get them, just because he's like, oh, I'm powerful, huh? I'm evil, right? He's like, because again, he's kind of out of it, right? The whole point, he's kind of out of it. And he's like, ha, 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 ha. You're like, oh, man, maybe he is Sauron, right? And then basically the one sorceress, guess she'd be a sorceress, right? She knocks him out. She like knocks out the old guy, right? As we call Midoram, but he's the stranger, whatever they call him in the movie, right? And then the hobbits find them, see what's happening, and they're like, we gotta help him, and he's being tied up. So they're like, oh, quick, let's help him. They're gonna hop through this real fast because this part is actually good. I enjoyed this part, okay? But it's actually pretty cool too what happens here in a second. So anyway, they're trying to distractions. They're trying like throwing rocks. They realize they can go help him, and she starts untying him. And then right when they realize they're untying him, we see an image. He's not the person tied up. He's somewhere else knocked out. And they find out the person tied up is actually the shapeshifter lady, the really scary lady with the white eyes again. And she basically, the older guy gets a sword thrown at him, right? The older hobbit, he gets stabbed. And it's like, oh no, right? This is horrible. And they're basically causing all these problems, distractions. And then what happens is basically he gets back up after being knocked out. And he's like raw, like he's like angry at him, right? So he attacks him. This part is epic, okay? So and I'm actually saying lore correct for what we're gonna find out what he is in a few minutes, okay? He's like, doesn't know how to use his power, still kind of thing. He like slaps the ground again, and they're like, ah! And the only one that survives is the kind of the main head honcho girl, right? Sorceress. And they have this huge battle. The battle's fun to watch by itself. You can watch the battle later. But I like the animation. I thought it was pretty cool. And because again, magic isn't like a huge thing in Middle Earth, but there is magic, right? So anyway, she starts fighting him, and basically she starts beating him because he doesn't really know how to use his power. And basically after what happens, she's kind of fighting him, and they're like, we got to take him somewhere, quick. And basically this person gets frustrated at the hobbits, so she's like, I'm gonna set them all on fire. So she starts doing the fire hand thing again. The fire animation is fantastic, guys. This whole scene was really cool to watch, okay? So so basically doing the fire hands all over the place at him, and Nori goes up to Meteor Man. I'm just gonna keep calling him that until I know. I'll tell you what his actual is in a minute. And she's like, we need your help. You're good, and kind of that kind of whole thing. And they're in trouble, and they're about to get killed basically by the other people, and that he got stabbed, and then basically he grabs that person's staff, right? He grabs the staff, and he goes, and they're like, oh, what? And he takes her staff. And he's like, I am good, or something. It's really good what he says. It's actually it's not corny. It's really good. But basically, he brings up that staff, and basically glowing like holy light comes out of it, right? So all the fire goes away too, right? And then basically he starts doing it, and basically he just annihilates all three of these people, and they kind of look like wraiths almost when he starts annihilating them. So maybe they were some kind of evil spirits. I don't know. Maybe they weren't sorcerers. Maybe they're supposed to be evil spirits. But he basically annihilates them, and then the staff itself disappears. And like, it's actually a really cool part. It's really well done. I liked it a lot. It was very, very awesome for the finale episode. I thoroughly enjoyed it. And anyway, then basically they're like, we just gonna sit with the old man here because he's stabbed. And they're like, let's just watch the sunrise together. He basically says it's sweet. It's a sweet moment. And basically they watch the sunrise kind of thing, and that's about it. And we'll come back to them in a minute. All right. So now we flash back over to the sea here with them coming back, and they have a really good conversation underneath the ship here between Elendil and Muriel. And he basically tells her, I'll be there to help you kind of thing. And she's like, and they're like, we have to at least make it worth it that, I lost my son and you're blind now. We have to at least make it worth it kind of thing. It's a really, really good conversation. So I liked it. Very well done. So, and I mean, did they need to, the one thing I didn't like about the previous scene is I didn't really like it that they had to kill the whole Hobbit guy. So I kind of dislike that. But again, that's a storytelling thing. Of course they're going to have to kill some characters off, right? Have to be some sacrifice kind of thing, which is what this whole conversation is about, actually. And then we get this shot of they're back at Numenor. She goes up to the front. Of course, she's still kind of blind. And he's all, like, startled. And she's like, what's wrong? kind of thing. And then they show the harbor, and the harbor has, well, what did we see in the other scene? There are black flags all over, which means the king has died, right? Which, great. Now she's blind. They lost. She comes back, and the king's dead, right? Her dad's dead. So it was well done. Again, lore correct for how Numenor looks. I think Numenor looks freaking fantastic. That's really awesome. So anyway, that whole part's good. And then, in good fashion, Alfarzon is kind of looking, and by the way, he makes a comment about mortality with humans, where he almost seems bitter about it, which is very, very good for the lore. So that is great. That's a great lore point. And basically seeing the king has passed away kind of thing. And then we know that. So then we fly back to Eregion, and we see this explosion happen, which I actually love, inside the tower, right? They see this explosion, and we go inside, and we see that they're having trouble. So again, I like this part. And I lore correct for Alfarzon's demeanor right there, because I really think that's a very lore correct thing. So again, a lot of good stuff still in this episode. I'll get to the parts that there's some stuff I disliked right at the end here, but a lot of it I did like. So he's like, crap, and it's not working. He doesn't say the word crap, but you know what I'm saying. He's like, this isn't working, right? We've given more pressure than the sun, basically. So they have all these seals, and it broken anyway. And he's like, it's almost like the unseen world. And it's like fused in, and now Galadriel's thinking, the unseen world, where do we see that at the beginning of the season, right? At a forge. And who's helping him give these ideas? Halbrands. Oh, again, we're gonna say it right now. Halbrand is Sauron, you guys. We're gonna find out in about 3 seconds, but he is Sauron. Now, here's the thing with that scenario. We'll go into it in a second and more, but Jethros called it like 3 episodes ago. He thought he was Sauron, and I had suspicions an episode ago. At the beginning or the end of 6, I had suspicions, but yeah, we both called it at the beginning of this episode. We knew it was happening once we saw the beginning part. So anyway, he's like, maybe we're trying too hard, kind of thing. He's like, oh, maybe we need to be, like ease the material, want it to take on another substance, because the Mithras so like refused to take another thing with pressure, kind of thing. So they're like, okay, so let's work on it. So then Galadriel goes down here. She looks really upset. She's holding a scroll that obviously has the family line of Halbrand, right? And when she comes down, Halbrand comes down to talk to her, and basically at this point is where we find out he's Sauron, right? And it's actually a really well done part. I enjoyed it. I'm going to say I enjoyed it. Now, something I really dislike, and I'm a little bummed about, I liked Halbrand as a character, so I'm a little bummed to find out he's Sauron, right? Because I actually liked his made-up character. But here's another thing that bothers me just slightly. I don't know, you guys tell me. I liked Halbrand. I liked this big reveal that he's Sauron and it's not Meteor Man, right? I was like, okay, cool. Like, that's quite a twist, even though I kind of knew it was coming. I'm like, that's cool, right? Where is Anatar? Where is his elven form, the form that he actually comes to Eregion to trick the elves, right? To making the Rings of Power. His elven form. This is a human form, right? So this is, again, a different multiverse than Rings of Power. So it's I'm going to say a dislike in lore and a dislike for the fact that he isn't elven, very fair Anatar. He's a more scruffy human. But at the same time, I do like the fact, I enjoy the fact, this reveal. I think it's cool, okay? So there's my 2 sides, right? That's multiple things in our head at once, right? And then they have a whole good conversation, and basically she says, you're not even, it died out 1,000 years ago, the lines of the kings of the Southlands. And he's kind of like, oh, you figured it out. You know what I mean, basically. And he is, like, being a lord of gifts, right? He makes a comment, which I didn't want to say a few minutes ago, but he makes a comment to Celebrimbor in that first conversation that, like, he's like, that's a great idea, Celebrimbor says. And he goes, consider it a gift. And I was like, he's Sauron! I knew it right there when he said it. But I didn't want to spoil it until we get to this point in the review. So anyway, basically she started getting really upset, and then he basically goes into her mind, which he is a master of illusion. We know that from the lore. So that is a lore accurate thing, and this I enjoyed. He basically starts messing with Galadriel's mind, right? Now, personally, something that I disliked, I see this whole plot that Galadriel has been duped by Sauron this whole time. I'm not really huge fan on, but the thing is, he did dupe everybody in the books. So, like, he was the Lord of Gifts, nobody knew. But Galadriel never was with him ever at the points. I feel like Galadriel probably would have seen through it sooner. So her not seeing through it this whole time, it's a dislike. I'm not going to give it a lore incorrect because that's not really something that's necessarily... because this is their own fantasy, right, version of it. It's not really depicted at all in the lore because she's never with Sauron in the lore, right? But still, I like this part that he manipulates her mind, and basically she looks the most elven she's looked all right here, right? I don't know what they did with her hair and makeup, but like it looks really like she looks good. She's like this is the elf look, right? A little less disheveled like she's looked through the series. Now, granted, she's been, on shipwrecks and riding on horses. Like, her hair isn't going to look good, right? But, again, of course, we see the hair of, like Cate Blanche. This is more like the Cate Blanche look that I think of from Lord of the Rings movies. So basically, she's like, get out of my head. And then she kind of falls for it for a little while because it's her brother, right? And, of course, it does make sense because he killed the brother So, in the lore here, he was killed by Sauron, right? And she took up his vengeance to do it. In the actual books, he died in the dungeons of Sauron, and he got killed saving this other guy from werewolves in Sauron's dungeon. So that fits the lore there. So that might necessarily have to be like a multiverse version. That could fit in the actual canon lore. But still, everything else is too changed to keep it that way. But still, excellent time, and he basically starts manipulating. And honestly, you know what's good about this? Is this whole look he has is kind of what I would have thought of Anatar, Sauron's fair form. And Halbrand does make a comment that he's known by many names in a minute, right? Or how, So, again, this is supposed to be her brother, but it would make sense if he took some form. What if in the second season, he takes the form of her brother as Anatar? Of course, that probably wouldn't work because everyone would have known who Finrod is, so that wouldn't make sense even in their version of the story. So he'd still probably have to look different. But this idea of this very fair-looking elf is what I think of as more of Anatar, right? Those lazy eyes. Yeah. But anyway, it's kind of like a flashback to her as a child, right? In that one episode with him talking to her. And then she basically sees through it, and they flash to another story right here, and basically he's like, look at me, Galadriel. And then now they're back on the boat, right? He's manipulating their minds, right? Because he's Sauron. It would make sense that he has this kind of power, so this totally makes sense. Again, that's why I said I enjoyed this part. And he's going through, and he's basically getting more and more like, what if he's master of deception, right? He's acting like, no, when Morgoth died, it was like a relief to me, and I realized I need to right my wrongs. Is basically why he's saying he wants to make the rings. Of course, we all know it's, not true. I'm not gonna say it. We all know he's lying, but he's like, we have to make sure, and he's like, you could be my queen. Now this. Yeah, I don't know how I feel about that. For their made-up version of the plot line, right, of their multiverse version, it's good. I actually like how deceptive he is and how tricky he's being with the minds, but I dislike the fact, and a lore incorrect, that he's trying to, make Galadriel his queen. I don't think in lore perspective of what I know about Sauron that he'd ever want to share power, which we know Gandalf makes that comment, right? Doesn't he? He makes that comment that he doesn't not share power. He makes that comment to Saruman in the movies and in the books. So I don't think so, unless he's just trying to deceive her here. Maybe he's just trying to deceive her. He's not really. But it almost seems like he's trying to, because he's like, they can make two crowns. And, you can be the light. You can keep me good, and I can correct what I've done wrong. And basically, and then, she's like, no, I won't fall for you kind of thing, right? That's kind of weird. And basically then he looks worse and worse. They start making him look worse and worse, almost like he's losing his cohesion, right? To be clever and nice, which I liked. And then he starts and then she's like, he gets angry, and then she kind of gets angry, and then he starts looking real mean, right? And she gets more angry at him, basically, and then his eyes start doing this and you can see even his pupils are doing this weird dilation thing. And I'm like, that's pretty cool. So I thoroughly enjoyed that part, okay? I thought it was really, really cool. Again, multiverse. He's not an elf form. He's in a human form. But you know what? This part was really well done, so I thoroughly enjoyed this. Anyway, basically, he's like, if you won't join me, she's like, I won't join you. He throws her back in, basically into the water, and she starts drowning. It's like, wait a second, how's she back in the ocean? Well, I'm immediately thinking, oh, he probably threw her in a, you know, her mind's being controlled in the river, right? Because they were by a river, right? When they were standing there before they went into this realm of mind battles. And then basically, someone grabs her out of the river. I was correct. And of course, I called it to him. Like, it's Elrond. And it was Elrond. And he's like, and she's like, is that you? Basically. You know, like, when did we meet kind of thing, right? And he says everything right. And so she knows, you know, he left her, you know, Halbrand or Sauron left her for dead in the river, thinking she would just drown and basically escaped, right? She doesn't actually tell Elrond what exactly happened, but they have a good conversation here still, which kind of makes sense with their storytelling and what's going on. So anyway, he's like, where's Halbrand? He's like, and she basically tells Celebrimbor and Elrond, we cannot have any more dealings with him at all. She doesn't tell him he's Sauron, which is weird in my mind, but I guess it's because in their made-up plotline, she's been working with him this whole time. She doesn't want to be, like, pinned as she's evil working for Sauron, right? She wants to kill him. She wants to defeat him. So, and she also just wanted to stop making the rings, or the crowns, even though Celebrimbor probably wouldn't in this point, because he wants to be able to stay in the world because of their made-up plot that they're going to diminish if not. But, again, for storytelling for the episode and the season, it's good. Like, it's very enjoyable. That's, again, why I enjoyed this episode. Again, that's why for me personally, as I've said like several times now, if I split it, and my other side that's more judgmental and trying to connect everything to the actual books, if I put that aside as that's the books, this is a, you know, multiverse, their adaptation, then I enjoy it more, if that makes sense. For me personally. You guys do whatever you want. Don't feel like you need to agree with anything I say, right? Just enjoy the review of what I think. All right. And anyway, they had a really good conversation. Liked the conversation, okay? So, I kind of dislike, just from storytelling perspective, that she doesn't tell him it's Sauron, but I still like this conversation. She basically says, don't make 2 crowns. She says, make 3, right? Because basically their whole thing here, which is, you know, don't make just 2. One will have too much power. 2, one will corrupt the other, and 3 is perfect balance, or something she said. Some made-up thing they made for the show. It's fine for the show. Maybe it's a little corny for me, but it was good. I liked it. I was like, okay, so they're making the rings, the 3 elven rings, right? So that's great. They're making the 3 elven rings, all right? So I'm like, yes, good. They're going to make the 3 elven rings. So he's like, I need the purest, I need some kind of alloy to put with the mithril. I need the purest gold and silver, and that's a Valinor, the dagger you have, right? Feanor's dagger. And I was like, oh, okay. I see where they're going with this, right? So anyway, she basically agrees to give the dagger, right? So let's continue on here. We're almost done. We're getting there, guys. We're almost done. There's a couple little goodies here at the end, too. Basically at this point now, he can speak better. He's kind of woken up a little bit, right? And she basically has a whole conversation with him, and she's like, they called you an Astari, right? So basically in that battle, the previous battle, they find out that basically he is not, they realize they mistake. She said, this isn't Sauron. This is one of the other ones. This is an Astari, right? So basically what we were told is he's one of the wizards. We knew that. Da-da-da. Again, I still would like it to be a blue wizard, but we'll see here. So anyway, they have a conversation. He's like, I have to leave. I have to go to Rune. And I'm like, oh my gosh, he's going to Rune. He's got to be one of the blue wizards, right? He's got to be. Because, so again, I like that I've enjoyed it that he's a wizard. And I'm like, he's got to be one of the wizards because the 2 blue wizards go to Rune. They go to the east. It's got to be one of the blue wizards, right? That's perfect for the story, right? I'm like, that's perfect. And then my friend Craig can be the other blue wizard and meet him there. Or Sebastian. Yeah. Yes. So anyway, I really liked it. This whole conversation is great. He's like, I know. He's like, you've been so nice to me, kind of thing. And he's such a good actor. I really like this actor. So anyway, she goes back down, and then this whole story short, this is a very touching moment, but they basically all agree, they're all missing the old guy who got stabbed and died, right? The other hobbit. And they basically make her family tell her you need to go with him. basically. And she's like, I know, right? And they give her stuff. They all say bye to her. You know, her friend says bye to her. Really sweet moment with her dad and all of them. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was very excellent. They're such good actors. It was really good. It was very touching. It almost made me tear up. It was very nice. So they have a good conversation, and they're like, go before, you know, you lose your nerve, or we do. So she's going to go with, and Poppy, I thought Poppy would come too, but Poppy doesn't. She just gives her a hug, bye. And they have a good conversation, friend conversation. It's very sweet, very cute. Moving on. And then he's like, are you sure you want to come with me? And she's like, yeah. And she's like, which way would we go? And basically he makes the comment, he goes, they make a Lord of the Rings reference. And he makes the comment that, you know, the air is sweeter this way. Let's go that way. Which is the same comment that Gandalf makes in the Lord of the Rings. Now, the question comes, is it a red herring, right? Is it a false herring to make us think this is Gandalf and really it's one of the Blue Wizards, right? And maybe they just talk similar and they kind of follow their nose, right? Because they're all Istari, right? They're all the same five, you know, they're all from the same place. They're all kind of angel characters, sort of. They're not angels, but you get the point. Is that what's going on? Or is it supposed to be Gandalf? Now, here's what it comes down to. I really love this character. I really hope it's a Blue Wizard still. I hope they're trying to throw us off to make us think it's Gandalf because of that comment. That's my hope. The reason being is I really would love to see another Blue Wizard, and I'd love it if my friend Sebastian could be the other Blue Wizard, because it would work really well, because they look very similar if it would be. But if it is Gandalf, that's weird to me, because complete lore change. I don't think Gandalf ever went to the East, ever. But the Blue Wizards did. So, and they do have rights, I believe, to the Blue Wizards in the appendices. So, that they have rights to in the show. So it'd be weird to me if they didn't use the Blue Wizards. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. We'll see. But it would make sense to an extent that, you know, he controls fire. Gandalf kind of controls fire. You know, he has the light magic. He likes hobbits a lot. Maybe that's what they're trying to go for. Again, if it is Gandalf, multiverse, alternate reality Gandalf, right? Like alternate reality story plot, because this is what Gandalf did, this is where Gandalf went, that kind of thing. Gandalf didn't come half crazy, right? Or like not remembering anything. We know that. And the thing is, before people go, oh, but we don't know that info, so they had to make it up. No. We know all of that in detail. Gandalf came from the Undain Lands on one of the boats with a couple of the other wizards, and he wasn't, you know, he knew how to talk already. He was already very intelligent. He knew his mission, but he did come in the Second Age. So again, it's quite a change. That's why I'm going to call it the multiverse. So again, here's the thing. I like the fact that he's a wither. I enjoyed. I'm going to give two things. If it's a Blue Wizard, it's a lore correct. If it's Gandalf, it's a lore incorrect, and I dislike it if it's Gandalf. But it's not to say that I don't like him as a character, and if he is Gandalf, that I won't enjoy it still. Okay? Can I really make that clear, guys? It's really like, I know you just heard me say that. You're like, oh, Zollin hates the fact that he's Gandalf. How terrible. No. Please don't misunderstand me, guys. I really want it to be a Blue Wizard. There's a few reasons that I want it to be a Blue Wizard. One of the main reasons is it would make the most sense because he's going to the East, right? And the way he arrived, because we don't know really how the Blue Wizards arrived, really. We think they arrived on a boat too, even though we know that for sure with Gandalf. But we don't actually know how the Blue Wizards arrived. So it would have made sense if they came in this meteor form in Rings of Power. But again, that's my side of my brain that's trying to link it to the actual lore. If this is just their made-up multiverse version, it's great for storytelling, and I actually enjoy it. I really like his character, and if he's Gandalf, that's fine. I'm not mad about it. But I'm in the boat, I'm in the party if I still want it to be a Blue Wizard, and I'm hoping that's a red herring, that they're kind of hinting at the Lord of the Rings and Gandalf, because they're like, oh, is it Gandalf? And they're going to be like, no, it's a Blue Wizard, it's not Gandalf. They're just very similar because, you know, they're kind of like relatives. You know what I'm saying? That kind of thing. So I'd be like, oh, okay, that would be pretty cool. But either way, if it's Gandalf or if it's Blue Wizard, it'll still be fun. It'll still be a blast. We'll see what they do. Again, multiverse, I'm not going to be comparing it to every little lore thing because they're obviously changing things, even stuff they have rights to, right? With certain story things. But I really do like this character. He's actually one of my favorite characters in the whole Rings of Power series, one of the made-up characters. I definitely think he's my top 2. And I actually like Nori, too. I really like Nori. I think she's a great actress. I think she's really endearing. She seems really genuine to me. She doesn't seem like she's putting anything on. She's a good actress, right? Her plot lines make sense to me. So again, that's my thoughts on that. And again, another big reason is I'd really like it to be a blue wizard, because if it was, we need a second blue wizard. My friend Sebastian could totally be the other blue wizard, because we know the blue wizards look a little similar, at least in a lot of the artwork. Maybe not technically described as, but they would. Sebastian's very tall. He kind of fits the look of this guy if he had a scruffy beard and stuff. And my friend Sebastian's a very good actor, so it would be awesome. I know I'm pushing that really hard, but like I really want my friend to be in Rings of Power. He would do such a great job, and I know he really wants to be in it too. So I think he already put something in for the acting thing, but who knows? Maybe they'll need him, or maybe if this is Gandalf, he's gonna meet both the blue wizards. Maybe he'll meet the blue wizards in the east. Maybe that's what they're gonna do. Who knows? That would be kind of cool too, wouldn't it? So there's a lot of fun things they could do. Again, I'm enjoying it as a multiverse, a side tour of what if, right? What if Gandalf did this instead? What if this plotline was different? What if Mithril had elf essence and they needed that to survive? What if, right, these different changes? That's why I'm calling it the multiverse version, right? But again, love this part. I liked, and a lot of people don't like that they're using these little flashes of like the Lord of the Rings. I love it. I really like that they're doing that Rings of Power. I think it's really, really cool that they're doing that Rings of Power, okay? So that's an enjoy for me, that they're doing these little things back and forth. Let's go ahead and finish it up. I love how he's now kind of, he's not crazy anymore, like forgetting everything. He's like, let's do this. And I'm kind of neat how they did this, because it will be a fun thing in season 2 to see them on their own adventure, right? Maybe he's slowly learning his powers kind of thing. I still would like to see Galadriel use some magic. I'm still a little bit sad I still haven't seen Galadriel use any magic in this season. So it's a little bit of a bummer. But that's okay. It's a minor side note. So then they go on their trip, and they go the opposite way back to the east, and they get this beautiful vista again. This valley, wherever they're filming this valley, is just gorgeous. Just thumbs up. I love the valleys. They're fantastic. All right. And again, I don't want to talk about it anymore, but you do understand, right, everyone? You understand what I'm saying. Why I would rather it be the Blue Wizard. Again, I'm in the same boat as I know for a fact that my friend Matt, Nerd of the Rings, he is also in the boat that he really wants it to be a blue wizard and not be Gandalf. And it's not the fact that we wouldn't be okay with it being Gandalf. It's just it would make so much more sense with the lore, and we want to know about the blue wizards. That would be fun to go over the blue wizards, because we know Gandalf's history at this time. Of course, they're probably going to change it, and they're going to send him to the east. But I'd love to see the blue wizards. What do the blue wizards do? And the blue wizards like hobbits too, because see that's the reason, right? It's more of like it could have been some extra fun, a different story, right? Instead of changing stories we already know, right? That's kind of what, again, can be fun to have a changed story, a multiverse, a different version, but we'll see. So now we're going to see the next part. Let's hop into the next part here. Basically, she gives the sword, and I love this part. Oh my gosh, this is so cool, and I love the forge. It's just so cool. It's so cool. They put it in, right? And then they shut these cool doors, and they go, and the bottom one shut first, and the top one goes skunk and shuts her face out. And it looks so cool. And basically the sword melts into gold and silver, right? And then this part is so cool, okay? So basically they decide to make rings, right? Which I already figured that out, right? And I'm like, oh, they're gonna make the 3 rings, the Elven Rings of Power, right? Because she said make 3, and Elrond tosses in the mithril, and I do notice that they make this totally look like a Sauron eye from the Peter Jackson. Does that not look like Eye of Sauron, or does that not look like the Eye of Sauron? The way they made the mithril cut that little, like it's Sauron's master plan, right? Kind of thing. So we need to do a ring lore video. We have to do one, because we need to make sure that everyone knows the official lore. So, and then we can also have fun talking about what are they changing and doing in this. So he sees it's working, right? And they do some really cool, and like the smelting and these it's really excellent. This whole part's fantastic. I thoroughly enjoyed it. It's really cool. And basically they get these 3 bars out of it. They're all mithril mix. One's silver, one's this other silver, and one's gold, right? So basically at that point, Elrond's kind of wondering about things with the scroll himself. He walks back down here. He finds the scroll in the water that probably Halbrand threw in the water, Sauron threw in the water to get rid of it, and finds out, oh my gosh, that they died out 1,000 years ago. That same mysterious scroll that librarian found in the catacomb archives or whatever. Okay. So now he knows something, so that's something for next season, obviously. And then we get this awesome shots of basically them slowly crafting the 3 elven rings of power. And they're gorgeous. And I knew right off the bat, they're not going to have the rights. I have all the rings of power from the Lord of the Rings adaptations by Peter Jackson. I have them all. But I knew they obviously were not going to have the rights to use the same exact rings. So they make their own, but they do a good job. Okay, so again, it just means more replicas I can get for my collection. All right. So basically we go through this, the beautiful tower, he's walking up it, and then we see the gems, this beautiful close-ups. You got to watch it for yourself, guys. It looks so good. And the gold entwined rings, and they set the gems into it, and like it's just gorgeous, you guys. Absolutely gorgeous, okay? Really, really cool. In fact, I'm going to use that. All right, continue on there. I may maybe use that for the thumbnail because it's such a beautiful shot. All right, so they show the rings all be created. It's fantastic, right? And then we get this fantastic shot of the rings, and they show us what they look like, and they look gorgeous. They're absolutely fantastic. I actually love how the rings look. They look so good. There's the rings, right? The 3 rings of the elven under the sky. All right. Now here's what we got to talk about. So lore accurate, love the rings. Enjoyed, love how they made them. Looks fantastic. What do I dislike about this whole scenario, this end of the season right here? Because this is pretty much the end of the episode. There's a little tiny bit more, but pretty much end. What about the other rings? We know that Sauron is going to go make the rings in Mount Doom. So let's just do a little thing here. So he's holding the scroll, and she basically sees he's holding the scroll, and he's like, oh, great. You know, he knows kind of thing. Celebrimbor's looking at it, and then we see a shot of Halbrand, which I love this shot of his eye, though. The shot of his eye is just the absolute coolest, okay? Like, that is just so freaking awesome. All right, I love that shot. It's fantastic, okay? But he goes to Mordor, right? And he's like, sees Mount Doom, and he's like, oh, yes, it's ready for me to make the One Ring. I would have really liked, I think it would have been really cool if they had showed Halbrand and showed his ear right here, and then his ear, like, morphs into an elf ear. You know what I mean? Like, he starts changing his appearance to be Anatar, the Lord of Gifts. But again, I don't know if that's already done with. Like, if he's never going to go back to Eregion at this point. Or is he going to go back as a different form later and trick them again into making the 9 human rings on the 7 dwarf rings, right? So that's where I'm a little bit confused on. So again, a lore inaccuracy and dislike the fact that, like, why they didn't make all the rings at once. We know in the lore they made all the rings at once. They're obviously not going to do that in the Rings of Power. So multiverse, different version of it, okay. But they're obviously not going to. So I was like, like, so what are they going to do? Right? What are they going to do with that? So I'm not sure yet. I mean, we'll see in the second season. But that's a little bit funny to me. I'm like, what are they going to make the other rings? Obviously, he's going to go make the One Ring right now, which maybe in the beginning of season 1, they'll show him crafting the One Ring, and maybe he'll be in a different form at that point. Who knows? There's a whole thing about the rings, right? That when he crafts the One Ring and puts it on, all the elves realize and take their rings off, right? And then they learn how to use their rings for good and protect against Sauron instead of it corrupting. The humans, the 9 rings, it corrupts them all, right? They all start immediately being corrupted by Sauron. The dwarves are too resilient, and they basically become greedier, and it does bless their kingdoms with lots of treasure. This is the actual lore. But they end up turning, inviting a lot of basically dragons know they have lots of treasure now, and a lot of the kingdoms get destroyed. A lot of the Dwarven rings disappear, which is why we only hear about one of them in The Hobbit, right? So that's the actual lore. We'll see how they do in Rings of Power. I don't know. We'll find out. We'll see. So, to finish it up, we also get another shot of basically, this is also cool. He obviously sees the 3 elven rings of power in his eye, which is like, whoa, dude. It's really fast. It flies by super fast, but it's really, really important for everybody to kind of know, right? It just flies by. Apparently, he knows they've been created now, right? So, and then they show the 3, so he can obviously see them somehow, right? And then they show his face at Mordor, and they show this amazing shot of Mount Doom, right? Like, look at that shot of Mount Doom. It's fantastic, right? So, Mount Doom, again, huge lore plus, huge like. I love how it looks. It's absolutely fantastic, and highly, highly enjoy that. So cool, you know? So cool. So, my friends, and that is the last shot
of the finale. So again, there's a little bit of stuff there then at the end that I'm a little bit, I'm not quite sure what they're going to do with where the other Rings of Power are going to be made. Again, I already gave it a like and dislike depending on those things. So what do you guys think? Did you have fun? Did you like it? Now, you want to hear real quick of my overall rating on the series now that I've seen all 8? I believe my overall rating from, again, I have to split it in these two things, so I have to explain it one more time like I did at the beginning. It's split into 2 different parts of my mind. One part is me enjoying it as a standalone fantasy series based in the world of Middle-earth, as a multiverse, a different version of what's going on, where I don't at all try to connect every little lore piece from the original stuff from Tolkien, right? At that point, I rate the series as a whole of enjoyment. Even the things I disliked or the things I liked, I think for me, it's an 8.5 out of 10. Maybe a 9 out of 10. And the only reason it's not a 10 out of 10 is because from their perspective, there's a couple spots in the storytelling where me and my family were really confused on things, and I think that they probably just a little bit of either the cutting floor had an issue or there's a little bit of problem there with storytelling slightly in a couple spots in the middle episodes. But and also, of course, for people who watch the lore, now that's opposite, a little bit different, okay? So for me, as someone who really knows the lore, compared to a lot of people that watch this won't know a lot of the background lore, again, I'm not all-knowing everything. I don't remember every little piece of everything I read, but from the majority of the plots I know, I still would give it, if from that more negative side, I give it a 5 or 6 out of 10. For my more side that's trying to compare it to the actual lore. Just because they changed a lot of things. That doesn't mean I didn't like the show. Which again, I'd like to rate it from me just enjoyment, leaving, saying, hey, leaving the theater kind of thing, even though it wasn't at a theater, but leaving after you watch and go, how do I feel after watching this show? My feeling was, that was very enjoyable. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I would watch it again, and I would like to see what happens in season 2. Right? That's my feeling on it. So again, I believe it is a higher rating, but somewhere between 8.5 to 9.5 out of 10. Real high up there. That's for my side that just not going to worry about anything with matching up on lores. For my other side of me that wants to match up the lore, make sure everything is 100% correct and balanced, a little bit more like Peter Jackson did it, where he just changed slight things compared to Rings of Power, where they changed some really big things. It's probably a 6 out of 10 for me, which is still a pretty good score, all things considered, considering how much they changed, right? 5 to 6 out of 10 for me. And that's just because even with the changes from a lore perspective, the visuals were freaking fantastic. The music actually ended up being very good in some of the episodes. I was a little worried the first episode didn't have that great of music. Once we got in episode 3, 4, and 5, they really started to get some really good background music that I actually really enjoyed. The actors were phenomenal. Can't even say the word. They were amazing. All the actors were fantastic. Even the made-up characters, I thoroughly enjoyed the made-up characters, which again, why I think my total overall rating, not counting my side that wants everything to be lore perfect, right? Because again, it's their creative license, what they want to do, let them have fun with it, right? I think that it's totally justified if people don't like something. Just don't watch it. Don't like it. I totally get it. That's why the one side of me is a little more intense on that. But the other side that just is going to enjoy it as a standalone fantasy series based in the world of Middle-earth, thoroughly enjoyed it. Okay? I really did. The actors were good. Again, most of the storytelling and character building was good. As you all know, there's a few things I didn't like, right, about Galadriel at the beginning. She gets a lot better by episode 6. I really like how she's portrayed then more than the beginning ones. But some people really liked her at the beginning. So again, not trying to change your mind. If you like her, that's fantastic how they, that's great. But, and then, just a lot of the lore changes. My biggest one is the combining of things. They're trying to combine things, right? Like the Mithril story idea, combining, it's also a Silmaril and Belrog power and Valinor power and all. It's I understand they're trying to make a cool backstory for it, but I honestly, for me personally, I didn't like that. Some people are going to love that. I know I have some friends who already really like that, so that's cool, that's awesome. Now, will it ever be canon lore? No, because the canon lore cannot be changed, right? The actual main stories. But we can enjoy it as another multiverse, another version or another story of it, right? So anyway, that's what I think, my friends. What do you guys think? Leave your comments. Thank you for listening. I hope that I kept that very positive. I'm a very positive, half full kind of guy. You know that here on Voice of the Rings, on Ironshield. I try to be very fair about things. I'm not going to be over here, trying to kiss up to people that made the show, or vice versa of, trying to completely condemn it. Like, again, there's like I told you at the very beginning of this review series, there are some extreme views, the people that will hate it no matter what and think everyone's terrible if they like it, and there's the other view that they like it no matter what, and if you say anything negative about it, you're like a horrible person, right? And both of those views are silly and far out, and no one should have those views, right? I think it should be more moderate. I think people should pick apart in their minds what they like, what they dislike, what's their overall liking of the show, right? Again, my overall liking of the show is very positive. I really enjoyed it. When I pick at things, there's some stuff that I didn't like, but again, I don't think for me as a standalone fantasy series, for me, it ruined it for me, right? As someone who's a super lore crazed, you love the lore, it changes some things that I actually prefer Tolkien's versions, right? But I can still see why some people would enjoy these versions, right? And I still enjoyed some of their changes, by the way. Some of it I actually enjoyed because it was like, oh, it's kind of cool to see a multiverse version, like a different version of what if this happened instead, right? Like, so anyway, you guys have a great day. Hopefully that was a positive way of putting that. Subscribe button's there if I earned it. Thanks to my Patreons. You guys are the best. Really helps to keep the channel going, and it means a lot. And your likes and subscribes, guys, that are free, and that means a lot too. Got links to everything down there and social medias and stuff. Next, my opinions will be up there. I'm not going to have really any more Rings of Power very much, but up there, unless I do some overall video. And over there's Let's Tell my main content. You guys have a great day in Middle-earth, and I'll see you all in the next episodes of Voice of the Rings. And we'll have a blast together, my friends. Baruch Hazad, Kuzad, I menu. See ya.